most of the people I knew there have passed on, as they say.
Yeah, yeah, that's a long time ago.
And I think that's the case. Well, probably will do that soon, so we better have this interview in a hurry. All right. What would you like me to talk about, or what do you want to ask?
I just wanted the whole your history why don't you just lay down your history for me, and if I, with your permission, I can record this for posterity.
Oh, I see. My history. Well, I
I want
went
to
to.
know specifics about the Solomon Center at Brown, and
I've never heard of anything called the Solomon Center, by the way. That must have been after my time, or the
yeah,
name. I mean,
I
yeah.
think it's called that now. It was actually the applied math
It was the Division of Applied Mathematics,
yes, and
essentially. I was jointly appointed in that division and also in the engineering department or division, whatever they called it at the time. It was quite a small department. But anyway. All right. So you can hear me now, eh?
yes, perfectly
All
clear.
right. Uh, well, I went to RIAS, I think it was roughly in the fall. Yes, it must have been in the fall of 1962. And I had been at Purdue for a year. Previous to that, I was at Cambridge in England, finishing my doctoral thesis. So that's the history of how I came to RIAS. Well, I met Coleman in 1961. I guess the history was, yes, there is more history. George Sego, an Italian, about my age, was, let's see, he was at Purdue. That's right. I met him there, and he told me about RIAS, suggested we all go over and visit RIAS. So we did that.
How do you spell George's last name?
It's spelled Szego. I think there's an umlaut over the E.
Yeah.
All right. Now, he had been at RIAS for some time. Maybe it was during the summer of 1961. Was it? Yes. Anyway, so I was at Purdue for the academic year 61-62. Met George Sego. He told me about RIAS and suggested we visit RIAS, which we did. At that point, I met Coleman and Joe LaSalle. And the result of that meeting was that I received an invitation from Coleman to join RIAS as soon as my commitment at Purdue was finished. So at the end of the academic year 61-62, I joined RIAS and spent 2 years there, at which point the whole center dissolved because of objections from the local residents. RIAS was located in a rather fancy residential area of North Baltimore. And the residents somehow acquired the idea that RIAS was pouring radioactive waste into a little lake which adjoined the property. That was nonsense, but in any case, a zoning hearing was held and the commissioner declared that RIAS would have to close. The Martin Marietta Company offered to reopen RIAS near the company location in Baltimore. However, that location was highly industrialized as distinct from the squirrels and trees environment of RIAS as it had been up to then, and nobody wanted to go over there. So as a result, nearly everybody left RIAS, perhaps everybody. RIAS had other divisions than the one I was in. It had a physics division. I don't know what they did. Maybe they were pouring radioactive waste, which I doubt. In any case, RIAS, I think, closed at that point. That would have been
64.
64, sometime perhaps in the summer of 64. So I guess it was then that, as I say, a number of us moved up to Brown. Coleman himself went to, I'm not sure, he had a rather complicated history at that point. I think he went to California, might have stayed a year, or went to the ETH in Zurich and might have stayed a year. And after that year, he went to Florida, I guess, and joined some university there. What university was that? You probably know. I don't remember. Anyway.
Let's see. It was University of Florida.
Could have been, yes.
And Stanford.
Well, yes, he left Stanford to go to the University of Florida. Yeah. I guess he was at Stanford for about a year, I think.
It just seems like Stanford is like one of the top physics. I mean, it is the top physics university in the country.
Yes.
So,
well, he
must have left it to me.
I think he may have had a difference of opinion with the authorities in Stanford. I don't know the details.
Yeah, or it sounds to me like that could be it. It also was around the time that they were up in the space program, so he could have had something to be moving to Florida for that, to go to NASA, to work with NASA, because he did a lot of work with NASA.
I suppose all that's possible, although I don't think he ever really worked on the space program, at least not when he was at Florida. But I don't know all the details of his time there, so he might have done. In any case, that's what happened. And so things were quite peaceful at Brown for a couple of years. I was offered...
You moved to Rhode Island in 64?
Yes. It would have been 64, I think, yes.
Yeah.
To Brown.
To Brown, yeah.
So that was fine. That was fine. I had a joint appointment with the Department of Engineering, but most of my life was in the Department of Applied Mathematics with the previous Brown people.
What was Thayer?
RIAS people.
So what was Thayer Street like back in those days?
What was
Thayer Street?
Thayer Street. What was it like? I don't much remember Thayer Street. Except as a name.
Strip at Brown now. That's where all the restaurants and shops are. That all the students hang out there now. So that's.
I see. Well, now that's up near the university, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right the center. It's like
right there. Yes.
It's like Thayer Street and Hope Street. So on either side. So
yes, I only remember Thayer Street as a name, so it had nothing particularly distinctive about it at that time. I don't. There wasn't. Yeah, there was a sort of a center. Let's see. What did they call it? Did they call it the east side or west side or something? Where the university is.
It's on the hill
in Providence, on the hill. All right. So I remember that.
If you go down the hill, you go down into you go down.
And there's a main square, and then the town proper, the city proper. Yes. Well, anyway, on the hill, there was a sort of shopping area. I don't remember how it related to Thayer Street, but anyway, it was there.
Was the tunnel there?
Tunnel? No.
They have a tunnel that goes straight through the hill from Brown, that goes right to Brown from Providence now. Was that there? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember any tunnels. No.
No. All right. I'm just wondering about the landmarks and some local history for
yeah, right. Okay. What are all those? Yes.
you were at Brown you said things were peaceful there when you first.
I guess until about 1966, when I was offered a fellowship at NASA in Cambridge, Cambridge, Mass. So I went up there and spent, or no, that must have been 1958 because I spent 2 years there, I guess, yes, before coming back to Canada in 1970 at the beginning of the year, in January 1970. So that's how it worked. I don't quite remember all the dates. It might have been longer. Oh, maybe I went back to Brown for a while. It's hard to remember now. Yeah, I mean, it's almost 60 years ago.
I know. Well, it's important to document what you can remember because it's I can't ever get that back. So
probably not, even if it were of interest. Anyhow.
Well,
okay. What more can I tell you about that?
Interesting stuff. What kind of stuff were you doing for Martin Marietta down in Baltimore and stuff? What kind of work?
Well, the first thing to clarify is that we weren't doing anything for Martin Marietta.
Okay.
That didn't seem to bother them. That was a time when it seemed okay with boards of directors to fund, so to speak, pure science. So nobody worried as to exactly what we were doing. What was I doing? I was mainly learning measure theory and learning how to write mathematics properly because I'd never really associated before with mathematicians. And RIAS was a nest of real mathematicians. I don't mean Coleman, but I do mean Joe LaSalle, Jack Hale, various, oh yes, who was it?
Harold Kushner.
The Bang Bang Man. What was the Bang Bang Man's name? Can't remember. Well, when I say real mathematicians, I mean real mathematicians. Kushner was not a real mathematician. Like me, he was an electrical engineer and we found ourselves getting into more pure mathematical work, if you like. So we had to conform to the standards of the mathematical community, which meant learning mathematics so we could write it rigorously. This we did. So that's how I spent most of my time. A couple of papers emerged, I seem to remember, on stochastic control and or stochastic stability. So that's what I was doing at RIAS for 2 years. Yeah. So then after that, and I continued that kind of work when I moved to the NASA, what was it called? It was the Center for something or other.
Electronics for Research Center.
Well, it was the electronics, it was NASA's Electronic Research Center. And then within that, there was the group I was with, who headed up by Hugo Schuck. Hugo Schuck had retired. I think he had been at Honeywell and had been a high-level manager there of some sort. And anyway, when he retired.
How do you spell that last name?
Schuck, I think it must have been.
Schuck. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, and he remained as the head of the group there for a year or two after I'd left. In other words, until about 1971 or two. He died about then, I think. He died in office as when he was still head of this group at NASA ERC. Yeah.
This was a separate control group under NASA. So this was in.
That's what I moved to after I left Brown because I'd been offered a fellowship there, and that lasted for 2 years until somehow late in 1969. At which point I was told that NASA Oh, then I wanted to join that group permanently. I wanted to leave Brown and stay with that group, but was unable to do so because I was told that because I was a Canadian, I was not, I didn't have the right kind of clearance or something. Not that we were doing anything classified, but anyway, that was the story. Well, a few months into 1970, in fact, the whole place was forced to close down because NASA wanted to close it, wanted to close the NASA ERC. There were other things going on in ERC besides our group. And in any case, NASA wanted to close the whole shop down at that point. So I was praised for my perspicacity and moving at just the right time, when in fact it was just a matter of luck. But there we are. Okay.
Cool.
So that's the story in a nutshell of my activity through the 1960s.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you did for Brown, like at Brown? And you mentioned that none of the work you did was classified. You didn't work. You never worked.
No, I never worked on anything classified. None of us did, as far as I know.
None of you in RIAS.
No. RIAS, by the way, is the pronunciation.
RIAS. Okay.
RIAS, yes.
I'll start calling it the right thing now.
RIAS, RIAS.
RIAS. Yeah, it's kind of like my last name, RIAS.
Oh, okay, there we go. Right.
So everyone pronounces it wrong. So, anyways, none of the stuff that they did was anything related to classified.
Well, not that I know of. They may have. Some of the senior people might have done, but I certainly wasn't aware of any such work. Of course, and as a Canadian, I mean, I didn't have a security classification or anything, so I couldn't have worked on it myself, and I wasn't aware of anybody else working on it either, although some of the senior people may have been doing so without my knowing that.
Yeah, I know that Lewis Whitten, his father, had talked about in an interview about he was first hired to Martin Marietta in the 40s to work on some some first pilotless automated UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, or so to speak, or something like that. So I know that some of these guys were involved in certain things, but anyways, that's not.
Well, the name I don't recognize the name you just mentioned, so I don't think that he was at RIAS.
He wasn't at RIAS then, huh? I thought.
Do you have him as a RIAS?
Oh, I don't think he is at RIAS. No, right?
Well, I don't recognize the name.
Interesting. Yes. Okay. No, that's why then. I don't think he was. So you talked about Coleman and these other guys. Who else was at RIAS so that you remember? Any other names that aren't other than,
okay? Well,
you said the Bang Bang Man. That was one of the guys you had mentioned that you couldn't remember his name. We'll try to jar those dust off
yes, he was a visitor. I mean, RIAS had many visitors.
Okay.
Who came for varying periods, and this man, what's the name? He was a scholar of Chinese as well. Well, I mean, I could easily recover his name from.
Yeah, if you can, we'll follow up on that. But talk a little bit more about the visitors that came to RIAS. What were they doing? They would come and learn math or work with you to learn different.
Well, they'd come and do their own research, and part of that might have been a learning process. They were of various degrees of seniority. Various senior people would come for short periods, like the Bang Bang Man. Junior people, like myself and Kushner, and there was Barry Whalen and Jack Wing, who came for a year. They had been students of Charlie DeSore at where was Charlie DeSore at University of California, San Francisco, but what do they call it? Anyway, whatever the place is called. What's the University of California in San Francisco?
In San Francisco, that would be Stanford.
No, the other one.
The other one. You see. University of California.
I guess it's just the University of California, but I can't remember the designation. It's not San Francisco, even though it is in San Francisco, or it's at least it's in whatever that area is called, the same area. I guess it's Stanford. What's it called? Anyway.
What was going on there? Connect that back.
I was saying that two of the young people at RIAS when I was there were Jack Wing and Barry Whalen. It's Whalen, I think, Barry Whalen. They had been PhD students of Charlie DeSore, yeah. And they spent a year at RIAS. And so they and Kushner and myself were sort of the young group at RIAS in that particular period. I guess I don't know how long Kushner stayed, perhaps a year, and then he went to, and I guess did he go to Brown after that? Well, I'm not sure of his history. In any case,
spelled DeSore, Charlie DeSore.
Well, he never came to RIAS, but his two students did.
Yes,
that's his two students.
Very...
So those were and we were studying and working on and trying to do research in control theory. So I spent my time learning mathematics at a far more rigorous level than I had used mathematics before. Together with doing research in essentially stochastic matters related to control and stability.
So let's get into more of your work and to talk about some more technical stuff. Can you tell me what a discrete event system is?
Yes. Let's see if I can find you the official definition somewhere. Well, I can't find it. Can I find anything? No. Everything's up. Everything's in another place, like upstairs. So we don't want to bother with that. Well, all right. I will tell you what it is. It's simply a dynamical system that changes state when various events occur. For instance, a traffic pattern in the city changes state when a car moves from one side of an intersection to a new street, either ahead or right or left. So that's a discrete event system. In other words, it changes state not continuously, but in accordance with discrete, one by one events, things that happen. And in the theory that I have been working on, this is modeled formally by a finite state, an automaton, essentially a finite state machine, with a control technology, if you like, and various assumptions about what the controller can observe or not observe. And on this basis, control theory is developed that allows one to synthesize a another automaton that we could call a supervisor. So that's what I've been working on. But that was much later than anything I did at RIAS.
Yes, yeah, this is the newer stuff. So well, I'll ask you some stuff about RIAS, I guess. What was the thing you did while you were at RIAS that you're most proud of then?
Most proud of? Well, what I did at RIAS was essentially work on stochastic control and stability. Most proud, probably a couple of papers on a topic in stochastic stability concerned with the existence of a stationary probability measure as an indicator, if you like, of stability. And what else did I do? That was, you were asking about Brown, I think, weren't you?
Yeah.
Or were you at Brown? Yeah, that's what I was doing at Brown. In addition to that, I was teaching at Brown, and the main topic of interest there to me was linear system theory, which I began to teach from what I called a geometric point of view, which led to further geometric work when I went to NASA in Cambridge, and ultimately a book when I left the US and came to the University of Toronto. So stochastic control and stability, the beginning of the geometric theory of multivariable control were the two major activities at Brown.
So what would you say are some of the core insights of your geometric approach to multivariable control?
Well, the core insight is that you get a lot of mileage out of thinking about a subject in a coordinate-free way. Up to that point, linear system theory had been pretty much dominated by matrix manipulations. What I said, in effect, was throw away matrices. We're not interested. We're interested in the concepts, and the concepts are best expressed not with matrices, which are coordinatized objects, but in a coordinate-free manner. In other words, we deal abstractly with objects like subspaces rather than objects that are typographical like matrices.
So what are optimal controls?
What is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a part of control theory that seeks to find best possible or optimal controls. That's what it is.
Under what conditions can optimal controls be decoupled?
Decoupled from what?
That's a good question. Yeah, because well, yeah, how about from so controller is obviously it's like a from each other. I don't know, from a system.
From each other?
Yeah.
If you had several controllers, when could they be decoupled from one another? Well, that question is not really a question in optimal control. It is a legitimate question, and some answers have been given. I worked on decoupling theory when I was at the NASA Center in Cambridge, and in fact using the geometric control theory, which I had begun to think about when I was at Brown.
Nice.
Because decoupling could be expressed in a nice coordinate-free way, which was both prettier and more amenable to theoretical development in its coordinate-free form, in its geometric form, than it had been in its coordinatized version. So I felt that that was a good place for the geometric theory to show what it could do. That turned out to be the case.
Yeah. And NASA was so NASA was using you for that research during that time in Cambridge.
I wouldn't say NASA was using it. NASA was supporting it. They were
Supporting it. They weren't
NASA outside our group. I don't think anybody really knew what we were doing or cared very much, for that matter. Eventually,
they were applying it
eventually, of course, NASA closed the Cambridge Center down. So I guess they figure it wasn't contributing to their bottom line or something, whatever their bottom line was supposed to be at that point. And the whole thing folded. People went in different directions, mostly, into academic jobs in one place or another.
How does supervisory control theory fit into control theory more generally?
More generally, well, if you like, it's a branch of control theory at this point. It's a well-established branch with its own models and methodology and point of view. So it fits in that it uses or adapts to itself some of the pre-existing standard concepts of control theory, like stability, optimality, controllability, observability, common concepts. It adapts those to its own use and purpose, so it is like standard control theory in that sense, even though those ideas take a different technical form in supervisory control than they do in standard control theory, which is mainly differential equations based rather than automaton based.
So while we're on that, would PID controls and Kalman filters be examples of supervisory controls?
No, not really. No.
Or are we talking about variational approaches like Lagrange multiplier methods?
No, they don't appear at all, or they haven't yet anyway. There is a notion of optimality, but it's non-quantitative. It's qualitative optimality in the sense of maximal freedom of behavior.
What are the current limitations of supervisory control theory?
The limitation, the main limitation, the central limitation is that in order to use it for the large problems where it's really effective, your computational methods have to be rather sophisticated and especially adapted to these particular problems. The people who have led on that side are the Dutch at Eindhoven. That group, who's the leader of that group? The trouble is, at my age, I can't recall names all of a sudden. It's perfectly all right if you're doing something else, then there's no problem.
This is all free. This is all I have all the time in the world today to do this, and it's all none of it's all can be edited out and fixed up.
Well, I'm trying to remember the name of the leader, the Dutchman who leads the group at Eindhoven, and I can't recall him at the moment. But in any case, they have done excellent work and have written quite a few papers.
What was the name of the group? Do you remember the name of the group?
Well, I don't remember that the group has a name as such. I just remember.
Just
I mean, I'd refer to it as so-and-so's group if I could remember the name of so-and-so.
Okay, so he was a like a doctoral advisor at Eindhoven.
Yeah, that's the idea. He was probably a doctoral advisor as well because he's a professor at the University of Eindhoven.
It was not Eindhoven University of Technology. This was
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Kiwi. So that's what it is. So this is the Eindhoven University of Technology.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll be able to look.
Anyway, they have very good problems.
What year was this? He was working there.
Yes, well, the work that they did was to use the theory of supervisory control to design controllers for a lock system that controls their waterways, that manages their waterways in such a fashion that that the Netherlands are not overrun by the sea, which the Dutch consider to be a sort of an important problem. And indeed it is. Yeah. Okay. So they used our methods and have written quite a few papers on this. I mean, it's all in the public domain, quite easy to find. On using our methods to, as I say, design controls that open and close these locks. And so I would say that's the biggest and most interesting problem that anybody has used supervisory control for. And it's been apparently quite a success story. I've never been there and I've never seen these things. I've just seen pictures of them in papers they've written. But anyway, it's all a going concern.
Well, it's nice when you see something go from theoretical to actual real world applications, you know.
And there are quite a few steps to take in that process. You know, you may have to redesign the way certain notions like supervisory implementation, you may have to sort of tweak those in such a way that they make better sense from a practical point of view. Anyway, they did all this and they developed some very powerful computational tools to finally come up with their controllers. But they seem very pleased with how the thing behaves. Another thing they did was design what was it? I guess a support system for patients undergoing various medical procedures, like I guess radiation treatment and so on, for cancer patients. And they wanted some sort of controllable table or type of what do you call it? Sort of bed thing for the patients to lie on while he's having these scans of various kinds. What do they call them? You know, when they scan your brain for various purposes.
CAT scan or MRI.
That's it, that sort of thing. So that was another application which they've written up and claim is successful. So this Dutch group seems to be the leading group as far as the applications of this theory are concerned. And there are other groups around the world that have been active as well.
Have you ever heard of SEL before?
SCL?
It's SEL Schwartz, Schwartz. No, Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories.
No, I've never heard of them, but I can think of.
They use a lot of the control systems for a lot of our electric grid. Most of our electric grid is run by these types of control systems. So
whether they use this theory or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I'm pretty sure they do because they have a lot of complex management. It's very similar to like that kind of a lock system with the way the water's flowing around these different canals and locks is very similar to how power flows in an electric grid. Mm-hmm. So it came to mind anyway. I have a lot of connections in the application side of control systems and stuff. My father's a control systems engineer, a lot of work in that field. So are there classes of nonlinear systems which still cannot be controlled, like chaotic systems, for example?
Yeah, I'm not too well up on the state of research in that area. I guess chaotic systems are problematic, I suppose, at this point still. I don't know much about it. There are, in nuclear engineering, there is the problem of controlling the plasma in a fusion reactor, which I don't think has been solved, at least to the point where they have an industrially viable solution that's distinct from a sort of research lab solution. So I don't know much about that, but I believe it's also problematic. And no doubt there are others. Yeah.
Where does supervisory control theory see the most use in applications, computing, industrial automation, or elsewhere?
I don't really know. I suppose you'd have to survey the literature to come up with a good answer to that question. But manufacturing, in one form or another, in other words, you have a lot of machines rattling around. How do you supervise them? Would be one application. So manufacturing is a big application area. And there are other things, certainly power systems, where you switch, I guess, generators in and out of the system according to the state of need. Well, if you just go to the internet and look up applications of supervisory control, you'll find a whole slew of things. I think I've mentioned probably the 2 or 3 biggest ones.
Yeah, that's true. What makes a supervisory control system hierarchical or distributed? And what are the challenges of each approach?
Well, that's sort of a big question. And in the revised version of my book with Kai Tsai, there is a final chapter on hierarchical systems. You could look at that. I could send it to you. Yeah, I've got all your coordinates, so I can send that to you if you like. It's just it's the same book as the Springer book published a couple of years ago, but with some corrections and one additional chapter at the end on hierarchical control. So that could partly answer your question on hierarchy. What else?
Yeah, it was the distributed. So
distributed control, yes.
Distributed control. So
yeah, distributed control may or may not be hierarchical, but there is something called distributed control. Yes, I don't know. When I think of distributed control, I usually think of something discovered by my former student, Kai Tsai, who's now a professor in Japan. He developed a theory of distributed control, which is really very interesting. I mean, the scenario might be something like this. You take, let's say, a complicated traffic intersection with several places where people come in and out. And so they come in at one place and they want to fight their way through the traffic at the intersection to get to some other place to exit. And so you can imagine that there's a system maybe of lights and perhaps a traffic officer who controls all this. Think of this in the middle of Paris. Okay? You have a big, complicated French intersection with traffic, and gendarmes and lights and so forth all over the place. Okay, controlling this thing. Now suppose that on a certain day, all the lights stop working and all the gendarmes go on strike. So the motorists are left to fight their way through all by themselves. What would be nice would be if there was some way of downloading into the brains of all the motorists, the drivers, the supervisory control that existed prior to that. So now the motorists can work their way through very calmly and peacefully, uh, communicating with their immediate neighbors, not with everybody, but with their immediate neighbors, to get through from one side to the other. Okay, and they can use their horn and they can use their signal lights and stuff like that. How do they do that? Okay, is there a theory for that? And yes, there is, where you take the monolithic centralized controller that you have pre-computed and you download it into each of the plants that make up the total plant or controlled system of the whole system.
But it would have to be distributed across the whole system. But as we
Then,
know, there are people and there are drivers out there that don't want to obey by the rules and drive calmly and use their blinkers and such. So,
well, if there are drivers that don't obey the rules, that's outside the domain of our theory. In our theory, the drivers are all nice, law-abiding, friendly people.
yeah, in theory.
Okay, yeah, in theory. Well, and in our theory, that's what they are.
Unless you drive in province.
If you want another theory about competitive driving, drivers who seek to maximize their or minimize their own travel time through the intersection, that could be another theory. Go ahead.
Yes, well, that's you have to add for those rogues in the system as well, because that's
so you have a game situation.
Well, it's a game situation because you also have to add that there
So
are
it would be interesting, yeah.
priority vehicles like ambulances, police cars, and fire trucks.
Indeed, you do, yeah. So whenever you hear a siren, you have to take suitable action. Get out of the way, in other words.
Yes.
Okay.
How does an abstract internal model improve or relate to supervisory control?
Well, there really isn't a close connection there. Internal model control is it's a research area at the moment. There have been a lot of applications. I judge from being alerted to them by ResearchGate in the literature. So, but there's no direct connection with supervisory control at the moment.
Do you think this concept of an abstract internal model would be useful for modern self-driving cars and other current developments?
Oh, yeah, be useful for everything, absolutely everything. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe yes.
Yeah,
it's worth looking at.
Worth looking into, certainly. What are supremal sublanguages?
Supremo means the biggest possible, and the sublanguage is a small language that lives inside a bigger language.
Right. Okay. So
it's the biggest small language that satisfies some property of interest.
how do those relate to relative observability?
Relative observability uses the idea of looking for a specific sublanguage which is both maximal and observable. Usually, in general, such a language does not exist. If you place certain additional conditions on the problem, then you can ensure existence. This idea was explored was invented and explored by Kai Tsai, my PhD student of years ago, the one I just mentioned who's in Japan. And so again, it's, as far as I know, it's a theoretical idea. Perhaps it's been published so that in principle, and software is available to do the computation. So in principle, it's out there for anybody to use. Whether anybody has used it, I don't know.
How does one prioritize and quantify control objectives? Like you can just say generally, for example, if a country wanted to optimize for something other than GDP, like health and well-being of its citizens.
How do they do that? How do they do that?
And how would you prioritize and quantify control objectives? Like,
Well, I suppose the first thing you do is form a committee.
yeah,
Yes, okay, a committee of experts, right? And you would say, you would then ask the question that you just asked, and the experts would say, oh, it's probably impossible. Or they might go away for the weekend and come back on Monday and say, this is how you do it. So that's how you would do it. If you ask me how to do it, I would form a committee of experts. Does that help? I don't know quite what kind of answer you're looking for.
no, I just want to learn more about it. And these are actually questions from a friend of mine who I asked him if he had any questions for you. His professor was a guy named Konstantin Lurie at WPI. He wrote a book called An Introduction to the Mathematical Theory of Dynamic Materials.
What's WPI?
Worcester Polytech.
Worcester Polytech. Where's Worcester? Oh, it's in Mass somewhere, isn't it?
Massachusetts here, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an interesting book. I can probably get you a copy of it if you want. Maybe I'll send it to you. But his basic idea was that it mirrors some of these control theory concepts, but applies them to material science.
Okay. Yes, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I'll have to get you a copy of that, and if you're interested, and get your thoughts on it in another follow up if you'd be obliged. By the way, he found this paper of yours, which I thought was super interesting. Oh wait, this is not a paper of yours. Who's this? So this is, sorry, he sent me this email earlier. Okay, I don't know. This is something different. I don't think this is anything related to yours, though, because no, Roger Conan.
Yes, I know the name. Yes, probably I know the paper you're talking about, Conant and Ashby. That's the one.
Yeah, Conan and Ashby.
Yeah.
This is he sent me, and I think maybe it's some of your stuff is referenced in here, modeled.
Well, I have referenced that paper.
Yeah, you have.
So I know the paper you're talking about. I mean, it's an early paper on what today would be called the internal model principle, although they don't call it that. They do say, I think even the title of their paper is that every good regulator has a model of the plant is trying to regulate, some such title.
Yeah, every good regulator of a system must be a model of that system. It's a pretty broad statement, and it's
well, their paper I read years and years ago. I tried to read it. I was never able to make too much sense of it. So I can't say that apart from knowing this is a thermodynamic approach. Yeah. Okay. Conant and Ashby.
yeah. This is paper,
Ashby was kind of Ashby was one of the original cyberneticians. I first encountered Ashby in England. Ashby wrote a book called can't remember the title of it. Anyway, it was about a machine that he had invented that moved from one state to another and eventually settled down into an equilibrium state of some sort. It didn't do anything really, but except that. But yeah, Ashby, yes, Ashby and Pask, Gordon Pask. Does that name ring a bell with you? P-A-S-K, Pask. Anyway.
So this is Gordon Pask.
Yes, that's right. He and Ashby were the cybernetic gurus in England when toward the end of my stay there, I was in England for 5 years, almost 5 years.
Wow, yeah, this guy's a trip. This is cool. I wanted to, there was the other name. So there was one other name I didn't write down, but I wanted to get the spelling on. This Barry Wayland and the other student who are
Okay, Whalen, Whalen.
WHA
Len.
Wayland. Okay. Barry Wayland.
And Jack Wing. Wing is an airplane.
Jack Wing.
Yeah.
Jack.
They were students of Desor, had been students of Desor.
And then how do you spell Desor?
Desoer.
Charlie Desor.
Yes, he was a professor at University of California, Berkeley is the name I was trying to remember before.
Berkeley. Yeah, I knew it. It was at the tip of my tongue too. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, that's where they were. That's
Berkeley.
where they came from.
That's over in that's over in Oakland or whatever. Anaheim.
That's right. It's on the other side from the main city of San Francisco.
Barry Whalen and Jack Wing. And the Bang Bang Man, still haven't figured out his name.
We'll get him eventually.
We'll pick him out of the woodwork eventually. Then the other guy was the group.
I'm trying to think if I have any books within reaching distance with.
The guy from Eindhoven was the other one, and then
you got his name?
University of Eindhoven.
Yeah, did I give you the name of that? Maybe I couldn't remember. Well, I can send you these names if they.
I'll send you a summary email of
All right, include questions. Any questions you may have.
And I'll include some additional questions on this once I've shared it with some of my colleagues and stuff, and see if we can come up with some good, more good questions for you, and get the rest of these names.
Okay.
And anything else? Let me see. I got a lot of stuff. This is good. I'll have to mull this over. I don't want to take too much more of your time.
Are you writing a thesis, or what's your mission in all this?
I'm going to put together. I'm writing a history report. More. I might use it in my thesis. I'm not in grad school currently. I may apply and go back for grad school. It's been definitely something I've been thinking about the last year or so. But I'm more doing research into just this whole organization at Brown, and just trying to get more around on it, and also just get more. I want more firsthand introduction to a lot of the people. I like the names because these are new names for me, and now I get more research that I can go out and find more interesting people to talk to and learn more from.
Have you talked to Jack Hale? Hale. Hale.
No, I haven't.
He may be deceased at this point. He was one of the senior people in that group. He's an expert on delay differential equations for systems with delay in them. He's written a number of books. And he's an honest-to-God mathematician. He was one of the senior people at RIAS. And
it says he passed in 2009. So
2009.
Yeah, I know. I'm
well, there we are. You see how closely I am in touch with everybody.
Well, no, this is I'm
all right.
I am honored and lucky to speak with you and get this interview.
One of the last survivors. Okay.
This is great. So
all right then. So I'll wait to receive your report with any further questions.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to see what I can put together, and if I don't talk to you before then, have a happy holidays.
You too. Okay. All right. Thank you. I will press the X at the top of the screen now.
Yes.